Hello there. Okay, there was a YouTuber that caused quite a stir this weekend. So it started Saturday, September 6th. Today is Monday. And it all began with one little scheduled YouTube live. Now, I won't name this YouTuber. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but ooh, it really caused a stir. You know, CrimeCon was this weekend, a lot of crime, true crime focused stuff. And CrimeCon sounds kind of like my living nightmare, an introvert's living nightmare. I wasn't there, but a lot of great interviews happened at CrimeCon. I watched them over the weekend. But also, I was alerted to this live scheduled for Sunday, September 7th. I think it was scheduled to take place at 6:30 Eastern Time, p.m. So I was like, whoa. A lot of us were like, oh my goodness, we're going to hear Bryan Kohberger's jail phone calls. I automatically assumed for some reason it was his Pennsylvania calls. Don't ask me why. I don't know if I saw that in the title. Maybe. Anyway, the live did not happen as scheduled and it has disappeared. But I saw this kind of a thumbnail. It said jail calls, and you see Bryan Kohberger, you see his sister, his mom, his dad, one of his sisters, and it says Bryan Kohberger jail calls with his mother and father and whoever else he calls. So I thought, oh my goodness, as soon as I heard about this on Saturday, I was alerted to this. Immediately, I start my whole routine. I was thinking, whoa, this is brilliant. This person, and she's really good at getting public records requests. She gets the goods. This isn't some fly-by-night person. I've seen this other different YouTuber who's been promoting Bryan Kohberger jail calls, and you listen to the video and it's totally not. It's some Mackenzie Shrilla jail calls, and it's totally not what it's purported to be. But anyway, this YouTuber isn't like this, so I believed, okay, she's got the goods. She's good at getting public records requests. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, why didn't I request Pennsylvania jail calls? I don't know, I had Pennsylvania in the brain. I started going back through my YouTube, my public records request emails, and indeed, I did request from so many people Bryan Kohberger's jail calls from, oh my goodness, Pennsylvania, from the state's attorney, from Monroe County, from jails, from Latah, from ISP, Idaho State Police, from Moscow PD. I'm trying to remember all the ones I've requested. And a lot of people have said, no, none. No, you're not getting these from Pennsylvania, or whatever the excuse was. You're not getting these, or I don't have them in my possession, blah, blah, blah. You'll have to contact this agency. And Moscow said Latah has them. And I'm thinking, okay, where are they? Now, mysteriously, this live video got canceled. We're supposed to hear, that's the assumption, we're supposed to hear Bryan Kohberger's jail phone calls. Wouldn't it be interesting to hear just how he speaks, what he speaks about with his mother and father? We've heard so much about Bryan Kohberger and his kind of weird relationship with mother and father. So it would be really fascinating, especially if we get to hear that November 13th 90-minute call. This is from 2022, if we could hear anything like that. Well, of course we wouldn't hear that. We wouldn't know the details of that because that's prior to him being arrested. Would we get any notes about what went on in that phone call? Maybe never. But in terms of the jail phone calls, after he was arrested December 30th, 2022, that brief time he was in Pennsylvania, he was extradited out west, wouldn't those jail phone calls be interesting? Of course they would. So no wonder this scheduled live really caused a buzz. People were really waiting. People were, making sure it's like appointment TV, appointment. It's like appointment YouTube video watching. We want to hear what Bryan Kohberger says to his mother, his father. How does he relate to them? Is he really demanding of them? It sounds like he is, the way he talked about, mother, where's father? It sounded like when Bryan calls people, he expects people to answer. He expects them to be there. There's video phone calls. There's stuff that's been entered into evidence, but hasn't been released. Well, since this live on YouTube, intended live, got mysteriously canceled, People are going nuts. It's like the Kohberger case makes people nuts almost. It's like, what happened to her? What happened to this YouTuber? What's going on? People are creating all kinds of crazy stories. They're thinking, did the Kohbergers get her? Did they threaten her? Did they threaten her not to release those calls? What do the calls say? And I think that's kind of getting out of hand. I don't think the Kohbergers have the power to, intimidate or threaten a YouTuber to the point of not releasing jail calls. I think on the contrary, the antithesis would be the Kohbergers, Bryan's fans, would likely like to hear his jail calls because every bit of evidence released, somehow they try and flip it into Kohberger's supposed innocence. Even when recently, now that we've learned more from the different evidence agencies, Othram, all the people who were involved in researching Bryan Kohberger's case, we see there wasn't just trace amount of DNA on the knife sheath. There was quite a bit of Bryan Kohberger's DNA left on that knife sheath. We've learned that, but it's already being flipped into, oh yeah, that's not his, or it was planted, or what about the blood on this? Anyway, let me get back on track. I don't think whatever happened with this scheduled live is as necessarily mysterious as people are thinking. I think it's probably some simple explanations. We will probably, perhaps, if the jail audio calls, Bryan's jail audio phone calls were released to this YouTuber, either several things may have happened. Maybe she just had to reschedule. Potentially we'll see it pop up maybe even today, who knows, this week to a later date because maybe she just needed more editing time. Let me tell you, editing these videos takes a lot more work than some people assume. That could be one reason, or it could be another simple reason is perhaps she received not jail call audio, but maybe just paperwork. I don't know. Let me tell you what I'm talking about, because perhaps she was anticipating audio files. Maybe she was promised audio files, and maybe she only received something different than what she expected. We shall see. But let me tell you what I'm talking about. In the general narrative Spillman redacted report, it's 29 pages long. You can see there is evidence here. It doesn't say Bryan. It says BK, jail calls, BK mail, items 874 and 873, respectively. Let me just get a screenshot of that while I'm here, save myself some editing time. Half the time in editing is me looking for, photos. I got to see what I'm doing here. Photos and everything. And we also have in supplement 264, it's redacted from Moscow PD, we have information about this narrative, Kohberger jail calls, messages. Someone wrote, I copied the following documents to a DVD and booked it into evidence. Bryan Kohberger phone calls, 2 Word docs. Red means not complete. Green means completed by CM, someone of ISP, so Idaho State Police. I've talked to them, trying to get from them all this evidence. It says Kohberger messages from March 20th, 2024 to March 21st, 2024, and his message report from February 20th, 2024 to March 20th, 2024. It also says Kohberger calls from ISP2. Kohberger calls from April 17th, 2023 to April 30th, 2023. And then again, Kohberger calls, and it has numbers by them. Maybe it's 3 phone calls from that previous period. Maybe it's 4 phone calls from May 1st to June 3rd, 2023. Detective Vargas, MPD, reviewed. Now, it's saying jail phone calls, and it's saying I copied the following documents to a DVD. Is it just Word documents listing his calls or transcribing his calls? I saw some of them were transcriptions. Is that what it is? Or is it the actual jail file audio? We want to hear the actual audio. That's what, some of us would assume it would be, but maybe it's not that. And maybe that's where the mix-up happened. I don't know. Time will tell. And then we also have the supplement 293 redacted, Moscow Police Department. It's a supplemental narrative, and it's, again, talking about Kohberger jail phone calls, mail, his messages. On August 7th, 2024, it says, I booked in a DVD which contained the following files pertaining to jail phone calls, mail, and messages. Copies of all outgoing and incoming mail Oh boy, that should be interesting too. Seeing all of Kohberger's fan mail and the women bristophiliacs going gaga over him. I just watched, I need to finish watching that episode of The Good Wife from so many years ago, but one episode is called Hybristophilia. Anyway, February 9th, 2024, all the way through August 7th, 2024. So you have some messages in here from certain dates from Kohberger, or perhaps to and from Kohberger. You know how we saw Stephen Stern's messages from jail to his parents, and Florida gave us those. Will we get those? Will we get Kohberger's? We'll see. And it talks about phone calls. It says Kohberger calls folder from CM of ISP. All these different calls, maybe 3, 6, 7, 8 calls, and then a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, and 5. It talks about Kohberger calls from April to May of 2024. It talks about a Word document. This document lists all of the calls made between April to May. The calls in red are not complete. The calls in orange were transcribed using software TurboScribe. That'd be interesting. I even requested it, like if you can't give me the call audio, just give me the transcription. I want to just see what he says. And the calls in black were transcribed by whoever wrote this narrative, Danny Vargas. All the other documents in this folder are the Word documents created by the software TurboScribe, which coincide with the calls listed in orange, detailed in the above listed Word doc. So maybe this is what the YouTuber received and was expecting call audio. Maybe she's going to read out the transcribed calls. And then Kohberger jail phone calls, August 3rd, 2023. I am now reading from supplement 228 from Moscow PD. Another supplement by Danny Vargas. It says, Kohberger jail phone calls on August 3rd, 2023. I booked a DVD into MPD evidence which contains my working Word document labeled Bryan phone calls of Kohberger's jail phone calls from the time he was in custody at Latah County Jail to present. The transcription of the conversations were not verbatim. The calls highlighted in red are not completed. The calls highlighted in green were listened to by the CM person with ISP. They're detailed in the file labeled Kohberger calls. I will update this document when I listen to the calls. Highlighted in red are future calls. So even if we can't get the calls, I don't know if we'll be able to get the calls. Maybe we can just get the transcriptions. Anything would be better than nothing. But it's so much confusion going around. I don't think these jail calls will be leaked like Bryan Kohberger's selfie photos. Now, I already have a video filmed about this coming up. I watched the Idaho doc, Idaho Justice, on 2020 ABC Friday. It was very interesting, very good. I already filmed a really long, like 2-hour almost, going over that, but that'll come up next, I hope. But one thing I noticed that was pretty interesting about that documentary, they changed the attribution on Bryan Kohberger's selfie. So we got more selfies of Bryan Kohberger we never saw before in that Idaho doc from 2020. ABC's Idaho Justice. Now, previously in their promo video for that 2-hour event Friday night, they had said, oh, these are attributed to Latah County Prosecutor's Office. Well, all of a sudden by Friday night, that attribution was missing. I was like, oh my goodness, forgive me. Video editors who had to go through and take all those attributions off because Latah County Prosecutor's Office told me, no, we did not provide those to ABC. I kind of have a feeling who provided them, but again, I'm not naming or, casting any dispersions on anyone, but I believe those selfies got leaked in a way by whomever was kind of working with that evidence and probably just gave them to ABC. That's why the prosecutor's office is saying, we didn't give those to ABC. So they changed it on ABC's 2020. They said these Bryan Kohberger selfies just released by authorities. So they got a little more vague with there, but they didn't go over, who exactly gave them to them. So my whole point in saying that is if we do get Bryan Kohberger's jail call audio anywhere from Pennsylvania, from Idaho, if Moscow can release any. I mean, obviously they're in evidence in a way, if not the jail files, the actual audio itself. The notes about the audio are in there, even though allegedly there was nothing of evidentiary value. It's not like they were sitting up there and talking about, when I entered the house at 1122 King Road, and I don't think that kind of stuff is on there, or else we would have seen that kind of pulled out. But people still want to hear them. And whatever happened with this mysterious scheduled live YouTube video, I think we'll have to wait and see. So what I will do is when I get updates, because again, after I saw that, I was like, wait a minute, the jail calls have been released. I went back through all the public records I could find that I had already submitted months ago and asked, please update me. These calls have been released. I put through this, public records request back in July, and you told me it wasn't in your possession. And so I'm like going back through and trying to find out, okay, if they are released, are they the actual audio files of the calls? Will we hear Bryan, talking to mother and father? Or is this just the notes being released, the transcribed notes? What's going on? You know how this case is like all over the place. So we'll see what we get. Whatever answers I get, I will end up updating in maybe the first pinned comment to let you guys know what I find out, what's going on. In the meantime, I'll go through and have to go edit this ABC Idaho Justice 2020 video I filmed. When did I film that? Friday? No, I filmed it Saturday, so I'm still editing that because it's a really long one. In the meantime, let's close with Hebrews 12:1 through 4. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses who by faith have testified to the truth of God's absolute faithfulness, stripping off every unnecessary weight and the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us, let us run with endurance and active persistence the race that is set before us, looking away from all that will distract us and focusing our eyes on Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of faith, the first incentive for our belief and the one who brings our faith to maturity, who for the joy of accomplishing the goals set before him endured the cross, disregarding the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, revealing his deity, his authority, and the completion of his work. So that's it. I don't know. I'm just trying to get to the truth. Woo! Per usual, I'm trying to skip past all the craziness and rumors and speculation and wild theories of what could have happened to this YouTuber who allegedly has Kohberger's jail phone calls. Who knows, maybe she'll put them up today when I finish this video. And if they literally are put up, don't worry, you will find them. They will be all over the place. But I'm trying to get to the truth of what we have here. And even in one MPD record, it says DVD KB jail calls. And I'm thinking, okay, did they accidentally invert, BK? Was that a typo, or was there another person, KB? Was this the guy who was referencing, he was also in jail, and he spoke about hearing Kohberger saying something, and he was on the phone, I think, with his girlfriend or whomever, and there's a reference to Bryan Kohberger. Maybe that is really a different person. Anyway, this is just an update video, quick little video to let you guys know what's going on potentially with all those Kohberger jail phone calls. Will we hear them? I want to hear them. I want to hear how he speaks. We very rarely get to hear Bryan Kohberger speak. He barely said 2 words, of course, in court because he wasn't compelled to say anything beyond. At first he stood silent, and then all you hear him say is like, yes, yes, yes to this. He admits doing this, entering the house. He admits all those horrific crimes. And then the other times we've heard him speak, that brief voicemail, Bryan Kohberger, he wanted a haircut when he first moved out west in July 2022. We've heard him speak in just body cam video briefly with the female officer, who caught him blocking the intersection. And he kind of talked about, we don't have crosswalks in Pennsylvania, blah, 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 all that stuff. and kind of getting out of that ticket, just getting a warning, I believe he got there. And then when he was stopped again that night in August 2022, only 5-minute drive away from the 1122 King Road house, very late at night, and he admitted he wasn't wearing his seatbelt. He's like, you guys would know, and then there's no use of him lying because you guys would get it on radar anyway, all that stuff. But it's always kind of far away. It's all this other stuff going on. So it would be really fascinating to hear how Bryan Kohberger speaks intimately to his supposed loved ones, his mother, his father, on jail calls. What do they talk about, you know? What's his affect like? How does he speak when he kind of lets his guard down and just talks to people he loves? That's my question. So whatever I find out about these mysterious jail phone calls, whatever authorities let me know what's happening, updates as of today, I'll try and put them down below. Of course, if I get the audio files I've requested months ago, I will publish those as well. So thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for my next long deep dive into the Idaho Justice 2020 documentary, or whatever you call it, 2-hour documentary. It was really good. And then also stay tuned because, of course, I'm researching and covering a lot more cases beyond Kohberger. Thanks for watching. Take care.